Hi guys, and today I've got for you the 1996 Mercedes SL 320. A lot of people know this generation SL as the R129. Now these actually ran from 1989 up to 2001. Yep, a 12-year model cycle. And to be honest, they still look fresh at the end of it. Now obviously there'd been tweaks along the way. For example, the early models had two-tone paintwork, but this design, this squared off design by Bruno Sacco, really sort of set the template for Mercedes models of that era. It still looks great today. It was a revolution after the 70s SL, and if you look at it today, I think it's fair to say that it's stylish and handsome and cool. Now, like all SLs, this was a convertible luxury Grand Tourer, but it was a very clever one because this thing, they all came with hardtops. These are the hardtops. This is a two-man job to remove this, so that's why it's on this car, but there's another reason why it's on the car, and I'll come to that later. But it weighs about 34 kilograms, and ideally what you would do is you take them off and you'd store them for the summer, during which time you could use the canvas top, which is also in the back here, a power folding canvas top. Behind the canvas top, there's actually a rollover hoop. Now that rollover bar, you could have it in the flat position, or you could have it in the upright position. Obviously in the upright position, it's protecting your head in case of an accident. If you have it in the flat position, don't worry, you're still safe, because if it detects a rollover, it pops up in milliseconds. Now this was unique at the time. In fact, safety was a really big deal for Mercedes at the time. This thing didn't just have airbags, but it had side airbags, and during its lifetime it got ABS, it got traction control, it got brake assist, and here in the doors it got steel side impact protection beams. Now these were based on the W124, which was like the E-Class of that era. Now they ditched the old agricultural suspension and they put in a sophisticated setup in here, including a multi-link rear setup. They even had a very early form of adaptive suspension on the top end model, which was optional on the other cars. And when it came to models, there were quite a lot of choices, especially when it came to the drivetrain and engine. You had V6s, V8s, even V12s. You got the 2.8 litre, which actually came with a manual gearbox. Those are really rare now. Then you had the 300, the SL 324 valve, which wasn't much liked. And then you had this one, which was the 3.2 V6. These were liked. In addition to this, you got the SL 500, which was a V8, and you got the SL 600, which was the mighty V12. Now that V12 had about 400 horsepower, and the SL 500 gave you about 325 horsepower. Now this 3.2 is 230 horsepower with 229 pounds-foot of torque. That's good enough for 0 to 62 miles per hour acceleration, about 8.4 seconds, and a top speed of about 150 miles per hour. The fuel economy on this, not great, but you could get up to 22.4 miles per gallon, and the whole thing drove the rear wheels through a 5-speed automatic transmission. So like I said, in 1996 the car got some tweaks. They restyled the bumpers. It got brake assist and the side airbags that I mentioned earlier. Now the way to recognize them is the fact that you have the 2 air vents behind the wheels instead of the 3 from the previous model. Also introduced in 1996 was this hardtop. Now this is special because this is a panoramic glass hardtop with tinted glass in it. This was an optional extra costing well over £2,000. It's quite unique and quite rare, and having this on this car makes this particular SL 320 highly collectible. So what about that? Are these appreciating classics? Well, it's a bit early to say. I think that they will get there. They are starting to get there. But what that means is that at the moment, they're still relative bargains. So good SL 320s like this, you could pick up for between 7 up to say £15,000, although you're looking at 20 to 25k for top end models. Still, having said that, brand new in 1996, this would have cost you £63,000. So we'll do the usual. We'll take a look at the boot, we'll take a look at the interior, and then we'll take it for a drive. So let's have a look at the boot. There's actually a button here where the key goes. You just press it and up comes the boot. Now there's not a lot of room in here, and that's not surprising because all the roof mechanism is actually in this compartment back here. This little bit here, that actually holds the wind deflector mechanism, which is a thing that comes out. It sits over the rear seats. This was one of the first cars to have it, and it stops wind buffeting inside the cabin. Keeps your hair in place, you know. This thing here, if you're wondering, this is actually a hoist mechanism. I believe probably something that you would install in your garage to help you lift that heavy hardtop up off the car. Now, like I said, not a lot of room, maybe a couple of weekend bags, maybe a golf bag, not a lot of room to travel. However, they did come with an accessory, which was a rack that sat on the boot here. So here we are, check out the interior of this car. Isn't that something? Now before we get into the front, I just want to show you the back. Look at this handle here to bring the seat forward. That's a big heavy seat, and look what's happened there. Look, I'll talk about this in a minute because this is something that's interesting on this car. First of all, I got to put that back in. Now this one has rear seats. Now apparently they weren't standard, so again this makes this particular car special because normally it would just come with a rear bench with compartments underneath. This one actually has flaps that open from here, but I don't know what they really do because there's no room behind them, so all I can think of is a way to put the backrest in place. So that's what that is. Now put this seat back. Now let's talk about this seat a little bit before I actually get into it, because you can see that's a big hefty seat. This seat actually had 20 patents when it came out. And if you've noticed, there's something very unique about it in that the seat belt is built into the seat itself. So this was the first time that had ever been done. And the unique thing about it was that then that meant that that didn't come across from here. It was actually in the seats. It wasn't on the bulkhead itself or anything like that. That does mean that there was a big hefty mechanism inside here. These were powered seats. The buttons are here. Now this one, it won't do it. But if I do that, the headrest is supposed to go up. And with it, this also goes up. So that made it the first adjustable seat belt as well. Now you may be thinking, well, is that a good idea? Because surely the backrest moves as well. But actually the frame of the seat was reinforced with magnesium alloy. So these were very complex seats. However, this particular car has issues with that trim. Same on that side. Let's get into it. So I don't know if you noticed earlier, but there was also a bit of trim that was coming away in the boot as well on the right side. As an issue with this, this was one of the first Mercedes to have the design of the seat as the way of controlling the powered seat. The key is a typical key, so it's not a starter button. It goes into there and you turn it. Starts up first time, that's really good. Now with this particular one, it's going back, but it's not going forward. So I'm using the memory seat to actually go forward. That's the foibles of old cars. Before we get into the good bits, let's just dismiss the bad bits. These trims are coming away on both sides. In fact, this one has been bolted back on with a screw. I don't know if you can see that, but I noticed somebody's actually screwed that one back on as well. And over here, this compartment, because you didn't get a glove box, because these were amongst the first cars to get airbags, that's where you had the airbag. So you didn't get a glove box. Instead, you got a little compartment here, which was lockable. Now it's not locked, I have checked, but it won't open, so it's jammed. But there is a little cavity under there. In addition to that, you had a compartment here. Now in here, there's quite a bit of space, but this is also loose, so that comes out and just reveals the guts of the car. And it also has ashtray, because ashtrays were a thing then. That's what that is, but you also get a little compartment here, so that's quite handy as well. Let's look up here at the instrumentation. Big, very clear, very open, all analog. Interesting thing, huge speedometer in the middle, rev counter, clock, which I don't know how to adjust yet, so it's not got the correct time on it. Over here you've got the temperature, you've also got your fuel economy, your instant fuel economy that it gives you there. You'll notice it's in litres per 100, you'll notice that this is in kilometers per hour. This car was actually imported into the UK. And then a huge dial here for the fuel gauge itself. Now the interesting thing is, you talk about ergonomics of a car. This steering wheel is massive. This is a typical Mercedes thing. That's a big Mercedes logo, airbag in the steering wheel, massive steering wheel. No stalks on this side, the stalks are on this side. That's cruise control, and that's your lights and indicator, all the rest of it. But the interesting thing is that when you sit here, again, ergonomics, you can see all of the dials, but normally, you can't make out on this camera, but normally for me, the fuel gauge is actually hidden. So I actually have to move my head this way or this way to see the fuel gauge. Anyway, nobody cares about fuel gauges, do they? That's, I think, is the takeaway from that. Air vents here, each one is controlled. You have your climate control, basically, is what you get here. So you can press auto, you set the temperature and you forget it. So again, very good for its day. Switch it off by just doing that. This has an aftermarket stereo in it, so we won't go into that. This is the button that actually controls the rollover bar, so you can actually raise and lower the position. There's your hazard lights. That is, I think, ASR. I'll put that into the screen because I'm not 100% sure what that is. Then you've got your locks for the screen. This is the button that actually, when you have the hardtop on, this releases the hardtop. And when you don't have the hardtop, this is the thing that actually lowers the roof and raises the roof. Interestingly, it's designed like the top of a car. So you've got the rear window and you've got the hood. So that's what that actually is meant to represent. That's kind of cute, really, if you think about it. That's a selector for the gearbox. So basically you've got two modes. You've got, I guess that's winter mode, W for winter, and then you've got S for sports or summer. Basically, it's an S mode all the whole time. 5-speed gearbox, you got that gated change, and then you got your window switches there. You do also have an adjustable, because I thought that this opens. So I saw this lever here, and I thought, oh, okay, and I can't get it to work now. I thought it opens. It doesn't open. What it does, it just slides it back and forward. So basically, you can adjust the armrest to how you want it, how you want to look cool. Other than that, it's all pretty straightforward. The seats are really nice, really comfortable, very bulky, as you can see. You've got memory seats. That's the other thing to remember. Memory seats. In 1996, this had memory seats, which is incredible. And the rest of it is all good. Right. Of course, I should mention, there's lights there. I should mention the panoramic glass roof. You can see my, hello. You can see my mate there who's doing the filming today. And then this one also has a blind, which is broken again on this car, but there's a blind that comes across the top here. So, only thing left to do now, take it for a drive. Okay, let's take this for a drive. It started raining a little bit, but look at this fantastic single wiper blade, which sweeps the whole screen. It's actually very effective. That's very good, isn't it? Now, this car is in excellent condition. It's been very well looked after. It's got 104,000 miles on it, full service history and all the rest of it. So well looked after, well maintained. Aside from this interior trim bits, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit more. So it's in good health. So the car is in good health. So we know that. So therefore we can drive it and see what it feels like. The car is it's big, first thing you notice, big steering wheel. This is a typical Mercedes thing, isn't it? And it's got wooden trim on this. I don't know if they all came with that, but this one does. Let's open it up. You get a lot of noise, perhaps not so much momentum, but as correlating to the actual noise that you're getting, So it's more drama than there is actually momentum that's happening on it, but it's adequate. And I think this is the thing about this car. Remember, this is a big, heavy car. It's got that V6 engine. It's designed for low down torque. This is why this engine was actually liked. You don't have to go chasing the power. It's lower down. But once you're moving, not a lot is happening. The gearbox is in sports. I don't see, I can go down into second. And, okay, so we got a little bit more access. I think it's second. We got a little bit more access to the power. Yeah. So you can actually change manually. I'm not really seeing the point of it. So best just to leave it in drive, which is where it is now, and leave it in sports mode. And the gearbox, it does a little bit of a kick down thing. So yeah, it just takes a while to kick down. Old school 5-speed gearboxes, we're spoiled. So I literally didn't want to kick down there. So, but the thing is though, it cruises very well. And I think this is what this car is all about. On these little roads like this, it'll do it. It's fine. It's planted, it's solid. It's got the ASR, which is essentially traction control. It's not something that you feel, oh no, I'm glad I have that. No, because I think that even if I turned it off, it wouldn't really make a difference. You're not really testing the limits of the grip with the power that you have. So I don't think that it's a major issue. So we'll come out of this corner and we'll give it full throttle. Yeah, like I said, yeah, more noise than there is drama, really, than there is actual action. But, you know, quick enough though. Catches up with traffic, not an issue, not a problem. Stays up with traffic, so it's got all the performance that you need. It's about, I wouldn't say it was punchy, but I would say that it has sufficient get up and go for what you might be asking it to do, so that's not really a problem. So the performance is adequate, let's say. Adequate performance, I think is the conclusion there. The handling is appropriate. So again, it's one of those things where, you know, remember this thing is a Grand Tourer. So it's not actually a sports car, you know, although it does a pretty good impression of one. But it's sufficiently planted. It's sufficiently static. The steering is, there's a bit of play in it, let's be honest. It's not entirely, there's not a lot of feel, although there is more feel compared to, say, modern cars. That's definitely the case. But, you know, this is a big wheel, bit of play in it. It's not the most precise machine out there. So basically, this is not a sports car, let's say it that way. What I would say is that we're going to head up to another road now where is the roughest road that I know. And so far, this is riding on 18-inch wheels. And the ride has been very good. And I think, again, this is what this car is about. It's about being able to devour distances at reasonable speed, in comfort and prestige and elegance and calm, you know, and I think this is what it's about. There's a few rattles and squeaks in this car, as we've established, but overall, it's very solid, it's very sedate, it's very calm. I mean, and it just moves. It does that, and it does that. You know the suspension is good because it does that Mercedes thing where it will rise up as you accelerate, and then it will sort of do that little bounce when you brake, you know. So you know that the suspension is there, you know that it's working, you know that it's doing its thing. So that's really, really good. Visibility in this car is excellent, and I think that one of the, you know, having sampled it with the panoramic glass roof, I think that's the way to go. I think that was well worth the extra money for those people that went for it, because it gives you the sensation of being in a convertible, because it's just glass all around you. Visibility all around you is excellent. But it does that without giving you the external element. So you're quiet, it's not windy, you know, there's none of the outside is coming inside, it's well sealed, and yet, you know, it's all like it's glass, it's open, it's airy, you know, and it feels like you're driving an open top car. That's what it actually feels like, just in the visual sense, you know. So that's pretty good. The seating position is excellent. I have no complaints whatsoever. I feel very comfortable in this car. You immediately do, and it's a Mercedes, and the seats themselves are just simply fantastic. They're just awesome. You know, they're big complex things, as we've already established. But you know, ultimately, you could say that, well, they're worth it because they are just so secure. And you know, you don't even slide around too much. You know, even the side bolsters work very well and hold you, even though it's leather upholstery, but they seem to hold you very well in place, so it's not really a problem. The brakes also, there's quite a bit of travel in the brakes. They're not instantly bitey, but they're effective. You know, so you know, cruising at reasonable speed here, and then, you know, there's quite a lot of travel before they start to bite and pull it up. But having said that, it's not like when you drive an old car and you suddenly have to readjust your braking because it's so much worse than it is a modern car. No, this one feels fine. Feels like a modern car. You know, it's not an issue. No, it's just that there's a little bit more travel than you might expect, but otherwise it's not really a problem. So that's all good. Threading this car around in these small roads and stuff like that hasn't been a problem so far, because although back in this day it would have been considered a big Grand Tourer, by today's standards it's okay. I wouldn't say it was compact, but I would say that it's okay, you know, and so it's relatively fine. It's just that it's not, the lack of precision means that you sometimes have to be a little bit circumspect when you're throwing it around small roads. So here we are on that incredibly bumpy road, as I mentioned, which you can probably make out through the cameras. And again, whilst you can see the movement and you can see the bounce, but it's not jarring, it's not harsh, and it's, you know, I wouldn't say that it's hurting me in any way whatsoever, as in some other cars it does. So again, solid marks there for the ride quality in this car. So overall, it's a very satisfying car to drive. It's not the most sportiest car to drive, but it is satisfying. You do feel connected with it like you would in an old school car, because ultimately it is an old school car. But it's not something that you want to be throwing around too much. It's something that you just cruise around in and enjoy. And I imagine in the summer when you go and store this hardtop and actually just completely start driving it open top, I think it will be a very fun and a very nice experience indeed. And for that alone, it would be worth it. I think for the money, you gotta say these are bargains, because despite these issues, they are pretty solid cars. They're ultimately engineering-wise, they're very good, and they will last and they will run and they will provide you with a lot of satisfaction in that time. Would I own one? I wouldn't, and there's a couple of good reasons for that. Firstly, of course, is this interior build quality has left me very surprised. And as an owner, I would be annoyed at having constantly trying to glue things or, drive screws into bits of trim just to, imagine the frustration that the owner must have got to the point where he's like, I'm just going to screw the bugger in place. That's what I'm going to do. And that's what he did, imagine what it took to do that, to take a drill machine and a screwdriver to bits of interior trim on this car. So I can imagine the frustration of that, and so that would be one thing. Of course, you could ultimately send it off, get it all sorted out, get it fixed, and possibly it should be fine. And the other reason I'm a little bit surprised about it is because, of course, if you regular people will know that I'm running, I own the BCG BMW E30, which is a 1989 BMW 325i. That's 1989. Right? So this is 26 years old. That is 33 years old. And the quality inside is solid. Yes, I've had some issues with that, and you can follow the story on that on this channel and on my blog as well on browncarguy.com. But the actual interior quality on it, hardly anything. Everything works inside. Everything is in place. Everything does exactly what it's meant to do, and there's no issues, So if I think about that and I think about this, I'm like, man, this car is younger. It should be far, far better. Now, talking of younger, that brings me to the other point of why I wouldn't necessarily own this car. Because whilst this car is just on the cusp of that classic, is it modern, is it classic, is it, it's not quite there yet. And I think that it is contemporary enough, it's modern enough to feel like a current Mercedes that's a bit old. You know what I mean? So at the moment, I feel like a little bit of a cliche. I feel like an old Asian guy driving an old Mercedes. It doesn't feel like I've bought this because it's a classic. It feels like I've just had this. That's what it feels like. People don't give it that sort of acknowledgement when you're driving around Northwest London. Like, for example, the BMW gets. The BMW gets acknowledgement. It's like, yeah, classic. Well, nice one, dude. This one is just like, yeah, it's just an old Merc driving around. That's what it feels like, And I think that, whilst I've said, and whilst it is a fact, that this one had much better suspension, was more sophisticated in every way, safer, and with far more tech than the one that it succeeded, the SL that it succeeded, the one before this, I would say, if anything, I'd have that one. Because when you see one of those, you think, yeah, cool, that's a bit different, that looks stylish. It looks like a classic. The design dates that car. So it looks old and it looks classic, and somehow that makes it cooler than this one, if you see what I mean. So ultimately, I would just balk at it, because ultimately, if this is not a sports car, and I'm not necessarily buying it just for the drive, as you would, for example, with the E30, because the drive alone is worth it on that car, and on the 205 GTI that I reviewed recently, the drive alone is worth it for the sake of having that car. But with this car, the drive is okay. It's all right. It's not something I'm going to rant and rave about. But the experience of the car is fantastic. But is it cool enough yet to justify that? Maybe not. Having said that, on the other side, the fact that it isn't means that the prices are still low. So now is the time to get into one. So it's almost a case of like, if you really wanted one, you're not quite ready to drive them yet, but you've got 10, 15 grand spare, go and buy one, stick it in your garage, pull it out after another 10 years, I would say, and then it would be very, very cool. So there you go. There's my review of the Mercedes SL 320 from 1996. Let me know what you think of the car. By the way, if there's any SL owners out there that have this R129 car, can you let me know what your interior trim is like? I want to know, maybe this is the issues with this car, maybe unique to this car, or are they just a generic thing that happens to them? Let me know. Also, let me know what you think of the review, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Hi guys, and today I've got for you a 1996 Mercedes SL 320, otherwise known as the R129. No.
A big shout out and thanks to Jay Williams over at Air Technic, who are top tier sponsors of Brown Car Guy. Check them out at Air Technic Co UK for exhausts, brakes, suspension and body kits. Plus our other major sponsor, Nayagen Solutions. Much appreciation also to tier 4 sponsors, Muhammad Ali Humaid, Tom Conway Gordon and Reza Adil. And of course all these other guys who supporting on Patreon. Brown Car Guy is eternally grateful. Hey, think about joining them over at patreon.com Brown Car Guy. If you can't, don't worry. Just make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel and website. Plus follow on social media by searching for Brown Car Guy.